And so the Khawaarij hatched a plan. The early Khawaarij with the Munafiqeen, they hatched a plan that they were going to assassinate the 4 people who were responsible for the negotiations that happened between Ali and Muawiyah. They were going to kill Ali, and they were going to kill Muawiyah, and they were going to kill Amr ibn al-As, and they were going to kill Abu Musa, as far as I remember, al-Ash'ari. In the end, their plots failed except for one. And Ali radiallahu anhu was martyred, and he was killed radiallahu anhu wa ardah by the Khawaarij, or by the group that rebelled against Ali radiallahu anhu. And this group again was funded and fueled by the Munafiqeen. So now we have some different groups. At the same time, or just after that, the fitan continue and the fighting continues, and we see the appearance of the Qadariyyah. And we see this in the hadith of Jibreel in Sahih Muslim, from the narration of Abdullah ibn Umar, that 2 men came to Abdullah ibn Umar and they said to him, there have appeared a people in our land who say that there is no qadr and that everything is random. You know, Allah doesn't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And Abdullah ibn Umar said, if you meet them, tell them I am free from them and they are free from me. And then he mentioned the hadith of Jibreel about the necessity to believe in qadr. So here we have 3 groups in bold. The Qadariyyah, who are mentioned in the hadith of Jibreel in Sahih Muslim. The hadith of Jibreel, that there has come a people who say that there is no decree and that Allah doesn't know what's going to happen tomorrow, that everything is just random, and Abdullah ibn Umar refutes them. The Khawaarij, who are those people who rebel against those in authority, along with believing that the people who do major sins are outside of Islam. So they believe that the people who someone who drinks alcohol is a kafir, someone who commits zina is a kafir, someone who does something really bad, tells a lie is a kafir, and so on and so forth. So they begin slaughtering the Muslims left, right and center. The Shī'ah begin to form even more, because as Ali is killed and the situation gets worse and worse and worse, of course the Shī'ah grow in their severity, and they grow in saying that, oh, the whole problem here is all with Muawiyah and with the people who fought against Ali, and this is their fault and this is Aisha's fault, and they begin to curse Aisha and Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman, and they begin to raise Ali radiallahu anhu to the height of a god that is worshipped besides Allah. And this is done purely by the efforts of the Munafiqeen. So the Munafiqeen are making their efforts, the Khawaarij are formed, the Shī'ah are formed, and of course they're not formed in the way we know them today, but they are getting more detailed every time, and the Qadariyyah are formed as well. This obviously leads to a big discussion, and it leads to a discussion amongst the Muslims about what is the status of a bad Muslim, because the Khawaarij have made it very clear, a bad Muslim is a kafir. Shave your beard, kafir. Don't wear hijab, kafir. This is the methodology of the Khawaarij. At this time, people begin to discuss what is the situation of those people who don't practice Islam properly. At this point, we see the beginning of the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazilah. During the time of the Umayyad Khilafah. So we see Ja'd ibn Dirham and Jahm ibn Safwan, and we see Wasil ibn Ata, and towards the end of that period we see Amr ibn Ubayd. Wasil ibn Ata and Amr ibn Ubayd are primarily dealing with the issue of what happens to a disobedient Muslim, and they come up with this idea that a disobedient Muslim is not a Muslim, nor is he a kafir. He is not Muslim, nor is he kafir. He is manzila bayn al-manzilatayn. He is dead in the middle. He is not from the people of paradise, nor is he from the people of hellfire. He is from the people who are stuck in the middle. And this develops further and further and further at the time of the Tabi'een and the time of the Umayyad Khilafah, and it gets worse and worse and worse until the Mu'tazilah are formed, and the Mu'tazila, in this point, they join between some of the beliefs of the Qadariyyah, the early Qadariyyah, and they join between this concept that the person who is a disobedient Muslim is neither a Muslim nor is he a kafir, and they pull all of these issues together. So this, notice what's happening. The Shī'ah start off as just thinking that Ali was better than Uthman. Look where they are today. The worship of Ali radiallahu anh as a god besides Allah. Then you have the Khawaarij, who start off as a simple person saying, "Be just, O Muhammad," and then a group of people who sort of are a bit rebellious, and then it goes on to the point of murdering Ali, and then murdering the Muslims who don't practice Islam 100%. The Mu'tazila begins with saying that everyone who is a bad Muslim is neither Muslim nor is he kafir, he's between the two. And then it goes on to mixing things in with the Qadariyyah, and they all start to mix and match, and they bring Mu'tazila version 2, Mu'tazila version 3, and version 2 and version 3 gets worse and worse and worse. The Jahmiyyah comes from Jahm ibn Safwan and from his teacher Ja'd ibn Dirham. And Jahm ibn Safwan and Ja'd ibn Dirham are famous for their denial of the attributes of Allah and their implementation of what we would call or we would call probably Aristotelian philosophy. So these guys start to deny the attributes of Allah. Allah can't see, Allah can't hear, Allah can't be merciful. Allah is Sami'un bila Sam', Basirun bila Basar. And they start to deny all of the things regarding the attributes and the names of Allah, wholesale. And we said the reason some of that before, because they compared him to his creation. Where did this come from? Yasir Qadhi suggests, and I think this is a very interesting point, he suggests that this came from a Christian speaker called John, or a Christian person called John of Damascus. And he was the first person to write a refutation of Islam. He wrote a book called The Heresy of the Ishmaelites, 𝘊𝘩𝘦𝘬𝘶 𝘊𝘩𝘢, the bid'ah of the Ismaili people, as in the bid'ah of Islam. And he was the first person to write, first Christian to write a refutation of Islam. And he was employed by the Umayyads as a governor or as a person in the administration, because he was very good at dealing with countries and sort of running things. He lived very near to Ja'd ibn Dirham. So Yasir Qadhi suggests in his thesis that Ja'd ibn Dirham learned from John of Damascus. And that's a very interesting point, because it shows again, where is this belief coming from? It's coming from the enemies of Islam. It's coming from the external religions. It's coming from the Christians. It's coming from the Jews. Abdullah ibn Saba was a Jew. John of Damascus was a Christian. It's not coming from Islam. And the Jahmiyyah, essentially the Mu'tazila, the Asha'ira come along, and they come in response to the Mu'tazila, and in the end of the day they're all part of the same thing. They're all mixing and matching parts of these beliefs together, swirling them around, turning them around, and trying to, sort of take bits of them and reject bits. Oh, astaghfirullah, what you're saying. How can you dare say that a bad Muslim is a kafir? He's not a kafir, not a Muslim. So he tries to destroy a misguided belief and brings another misguided belief in its place. The Asha'ira, well known for their hatred of the Mu'tazila. They come along, and this comes along in the time of the Abbasids, 132 after the Hijrah onwards. Greek philosophy is translated, and deviancy becomes widespread, including deviancy in the names and attributes of Allah. So along come the Asha'ira and some of the other groups of Kalam, and they basically turn around and trying to refute the Mu'tazila, and end up also coming up with some very, very deviant beliefs about Allah's names and attributes. And so they say yed doesn't mean yed, and speech doesn't mean speech, and hand doesn't mean hand, and foot doesn't mean foot, and all of these other things. Go back with their history. Say, Ya ayyuhal asha'ira, O you Ash'aris, let us look at your history. And the majority of Muslims today, I think it's safe to say that a decent majority, if not the majority of Muslims today, would class themselves as Ash'ari or Maturidi. This is the majority of the subcontinent, like Aqeedah, belief, along with extreme sort of Sufism and stuff like that. And Al-Ghazali was the first one to join between the two. Al-Ghazali came along and joined between ilm al-kalam, which was the Greek philosophy, and between Sufism. So he came and mixed those two, and that is given what most people follow today. So we say to them, Ya Ikhwan, let us have a look at your history of your Aqeedah. let us have a little look at the history of your aqeedah. It either goes back to a Jew or a Christian. It goes back to the munafiqeen. It goes back to those people who disobeyed and hated Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It goes back to those people who had no concept of tawheed. It doesn't go back to the companions. Take our aqeedah, this aqeedah that we inshaAllah ta'ala we are upon. This aqeedah, wallahi, you can look at it, it's the same. Don't say it's the aqeedah of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. Don't say it's the aqeedah of Ibn Taymiyyah. Don't say it's the aqeedah of Imam Ahmad. This is the aqeedah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the aqeedah of his companions. It has a chain. We go back and we end up with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You go back, you end up with Ja'd ibn Dirham and Jahm ibn Safwan. You go back, you end up with Amr ibn Ubaid, and you end up with these people who, wallahi, they had no virtue in the religion at all. They had no teachers from the companions. They were Wasil ibn Ata, rejected Al-Hasan al-Basri and walked away from him. And that's why he gave the name the Mu'tazila, the people who withdraw themselves, because he withdrew himself from Islam and from, the teachings of the companions. Wasil ibn Ata was famous for withdrawing himself from the teachings of the companions and pulling away from the teachings of the companions. So we say to them, MashaAllah, Tabarakallah, look at your aqeedah, look at your silsila. Silsila to shayateen, all the way up. It's a silsila with shayateen fawqa shayateen, all the way up, until you end up with a Jew, munafiq, or a Christian who wrote a refutation of Islam. This is what your aqeedah is based upon. As for our aqeedah, walillahi alhamd, it is based upon the aqeedah of the companions radiyallahu anhum who learnt it from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You will not see this aqeedah to be any different from the aqeedah of Ibn Abbas, or from the aqeedah of Abu Hurairah, or from the aqeedah of Ali, or from the aqeedah of Uthman, or from Umar, or from Abu Bakr, or from anyone. Because alhamdulillah, this aqeedah is based on the Qur'an and based upon the Sunnah, and not based upon the desires and the ahwa. Some of them say, no, we're not from Jahm bin Safwan, we're from Aristotle. MashaAllah, you're getting better and better. You're from a Greek kafir who didn't even believe in Allah Azza wa Jal in any rational form. Subhanallah, this is where you take your aqeedah from. Either you take it from Aristotle, or you take it from the munafiqeen, or the Jews, or the Christians, but you don't take it from Islam and you don't take it from the Sunnah. And then they say to you that our aqeedah was invented by Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, or our aqeedah was invented by Ibn Taymiyyah, or our aqeedah was invented by Imam Ahmad. See, there's no difference in their aqeedah at all, because alhamdulillah, the aqeedah of Ahl Sunnah is one. In Pakistan, in India, in Bangladesh, in Saudi Arabia, in Yemen, in the Emirates, in Syria, in Africa, in Nigeria, they all have the same aqeedah, the aqeedah of Ahl Sunnah. When you look, those people who are upon the Sunnah, you don't find any difference. Whereas the Asha'ira, wallah, if you put two of them in the room, they couldn't agree with each other. If you put two of them in the room and start them, if you want to do this, you put two Ash'aris in the room and start them on the topic of kasb. What does kasb mean? This because the Ash'aris are actually Jabariyah in terms of they believe that that we're puppets, we don't have any will whatsoever. They believe that we are just puppets on the stage and Allah is just moving us around and we don't decide to do right or wrong. Except for something called kasb. And none of them can agree what this thing called kasb is. And you put two of them in the room and let them have it out with each other. Two of them can't agree. Alhamdulillah, Ahl Sunnah from all over the world, from every single place, from every single time, the Tabi'een, 800 after the Hijrah, 600 after the Hijrah, 200 after the Hijrah, whatever time you pick, their aqeedah is exactly the same. Forget that, go back. The aqeedah of Nuh is the same. The aqeedah of Ibrahim is the same. The aqeedah of Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, وعلى الأنبياء جميعا salatu wassalam. Their aqeedah is all the same because their aqeedah doesn't differ. It's all from the same source. Whereas these guys, the Mu'tazila become the Asha'ira, and the Asha'ira split into the Maturidi, and the Maturidiyah become, and they just split up and up and up like atom. They just, like a nuclear reaction, they're just splitting. And they can't stay together in one group because their aqeedah is batila. It's an aqeedah that's not from the Qur'an and from the Sunnah. And of course, the Asha'ira love taking pot shots at the Mu'tazila, and the Mu'tazila love taking pot shots at the Asha'ira. And the Jahmiyyah love taking pot shots at all of them, and then the Khawaarij like to say that all of them are wrong. And alhamdulillah, you say, you people are just, it's the pot calling the kettle black. You're all on the same methodology. You've all taken your deen from somewhere that's not the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So wherever you've taken your deen from, we call these people to come back to the Qur'an and the Sunnah and to the understanding of the companions radiyallahu anhum wa ardahum ajma'een. And this shows us that this aqeedah, wallah, and I don't say this book, because this book, it can have mistakes in, I'm a human being. But I say this aqeedah, and that's why when you attribute yourself to the Salaf are ma'sumun. The Salaf don't have any sin as a group, because the Prophet said, my ummah will not gather upon misguidance. One person from the Salaf can be wrong, but the whole Salaf cannot be wrong. Because the ummah will never gather together. The ummah who is upon the truth, the Salaf as-Salih, they will never gather together upon falsehood. And that's why you see that aqeedah is no different. Minor little things that people disagreed over, or minor things that small mistakes people made, and the person is known for the Sunnah. And like 𝘊𝘩𝘵 said, if a person is known for being upon the Sunnah and they make a mistake, that doesn't make them outside of the Sunnah. And a person is known for bid'ah and they do a good deed, it doesn't make them from the Sunnah. So in terms of this, we see that yes, there were some minor things, there were some issues a little bit with some of the aqeedah of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah with regard to iman, and mistakes that were made sincerely, and with other people, and that that it was said about Ibn Taymiyyah regarding the hellfire, which I don't think is true, but that's another topic. So there were little mistakes, but broadly, the Salaf as a whole, their aqeedah is all the same. They all believe the same thing. And it comes from a divine origin, and that's one of the reasons we use to prove the Qur'an. We say to people, look at it, you don't find any contradiction in it. So we say, if you want to find the aqeedah that is true, look at the aqeedah that doesn't have any contradiction. It wasn't invented 200 years after, or 300 years after, or 400 years after. Like, it has been said to some of the Ash'ari, and I'll finish on this point. It was said to them, if you think someone like al-Juwayni is a fundamental cause for guidance, as in, if you don't understand his methodology, you can't be guided, then very simple, what about the people who came before al-Juwayni? Were they Muslim? Were they kafir? Were they fasiq? Were they believers? What were they? Those people who came before al-Juwayni, those people who came before Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, were they upon guidance or misguidance? Were they upon falsehood or truth? You people say that without understanding this aqeedah of yours, you cannot be upon guidance. So what happened to the people before your aqeedah existed? There's no answer, except to say that, no, this wasn't clear at this time. There isn't an answer to it. But alhamdulillah, there is an answer to say that this is not the right aqeedah. When you look at the right aqeedah, we say, no problem, there was someone before you. Even before the Prophet ﷺ, there were hundreds and thousands of people who carried this aqeedah, and they were the people of Tawheed that have always existed since Allah put Adam on the earth. And until the Day of Judgment, there will remain a group of my ummah upon the haqq, ظاهرين, upon the truth, clearly upon the truth. They will not be harmed by those who oppose them until the command of Allah comes, until the command of Allah, the Day of Judgment comes, and they remain in exactly the same situation. Nothing has changed.